to the cloud. Just in case you guys didn't hear me say that, it's recording now. All right. For those of you that are looking for Dr. Wakefield, he had to leave campus for sick children, and he asked me to come and take over and help get things set up. But this is their presentation, so I am just going to slowly step away and let you guys take over.
All right, what's up, everyone? So we're just going to talk to you guys about like everything that comes in, everything that you have to do, like kind of get into med school. So like we'll talk about the application process, primary application, secondary interviews, like pretty much the whole way from like A to B. And then right now we have all three of us. We all go to USC School of Medicine in Greenville. Me and Killian were M2s, and then this is JJ. He is an M4. So yeah, I'll just get this PowerPoint started. Wait, do I have to do that?
Come on, I thought you had logged in.
All right. I hope I don't have to run back and forth.
Nah, boom, just unplug this joint and plug that one in. HDMI, soapbox 2.
Well, I can't just plug in my laptop, can I? Because I only have two USB. No, because I only have two USB.
I got you.
That's crazy. All right,
Okay,
Dr.
cool.
Clip in next place.
Yeah, so we'll do like quick intros. So I'm Yusuf Muhammad. Right now I'm a second year medical student. I went to Coastal Carolina, graduated in 2020. So originally I'm from Queens, New York. Spent like 10 years of my life there. Moved to Myrtle Beach. I went to high school here, Coastal. So when I'm not studying, things I like to do in my free time, I like to ride my motorcycle. I like to work out, travel, spend time with friends and family. And then, so my path to medicine was a little bit unique. So if you could tell, like when I was in high school, I was an idiot. And then I got to Coastal, I didn't get any smarter. So like my first semester, I had a 2.7 GPA. The next year, I did even worse. I was failing literally all my classes. So then I decided to just drop out of school. And then I was like, college isn't for me. So I started washing dishes for a year, and then I was like, dude, this sucks. So I decided to, give college one last try, just to do my best. And when I came back to school, I was like crushing it. So after doing that for like 2 years, I was like, you know what? I always wanted to be a doctor. Let me give this a shot. So at the end of my second year, I started to like volunteer in the ED, started scribing, shadowing, and I was like, yeah, like this is definitely what I want to do. So just went all in, and I mean, it worked out. So that's just a little bit about me. And then Killian.
Hey guys, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm Killian Bucci. My hometown's Myrtle Beach. Well, I'm kind of like Yusuf. Like I'm from New York, but I moved here when I was in like second grade, so I kind of just say I'm from Myrtle Beach. But I graduated from Coastal in 2020. I had a degree in biology, and so I feel like I had like a pretty standard like path. I didn't have like a cool like cool story like Yusuf, but I started like my little journey. I was in the pre-med program at a local high school here, AAST, and they have like a program with like juniors and seniors in high school where they can kind of like see what healthcare is about, and that kind of like piqued a lot of my interest. And so I actually did my first 2 years at Clemson, but I really like didn't like it there like at all. So I came back home to Myrtle Beach to finish my last year and a half here at Coastal, and it makes me wish I just did like all my time here because I really liked Coastal. I thought it was a lot of fun. And so other than that, I took a gap year and a half. So I graduated in December, and so I had a year and a half before med school, and I spent that whole time scribing with a urologist around here. And I just wanted to like plug that like they're always looking for scribes at this urology place, Atlantic Urology around here. So, you know, reach out to them if you guys are looking for jobs. Say you know me. And then I also like I volunteered and shadowed in the emergency department in my gap year, and I did a lot of soccer coaching. And so, yeah.
All right, my name is JJ Jenkins. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. I graduated from this lovely institution December 2018, majored in biology. I love to lift weights. I make music. I be cooking. I be reading. I be playing the game. I'm a pirate, so I got like emulators and all kind of stuff on my computer, just throwing back to my childhood. And I'm a current M4. I'm applying to orthopedic surgery. My application's due in a couple weeks, and then interviews and matching all that. I'll go into that later. But I kind of stand here as an example of what not to do. All right, so boom. Undergrad, I didn't do a lick of research, like zero. They was talking about like sucking fruit flies through straws and going out in the field and looking at snakes and spiders. I was like, yeah, that was like most of the projects. I was like, I don't want to do none of that. So didn't touch a lick of research. I had a solid GPA, but my MCAT was very poor. I thought, all right, I had a good GPA. I might know this. I could be good. And then, I studied a little bit here and there off and on, came back. The average 500, I got a 499. And 500 could really, get you a lot of interviews, get you in the door anywhere. Nah, did poorly on that. And I did 22 primary applications. I got 14 secondaries. I got 3 interviews. And then I got 1 acceptance to USC Greenville. So I came in by the skin of my teeth, coming from a smaller school, less opportunity. And I sent my application in late. So like early decisions like July, August, and then the regular one is due by November. I sent it off October. Like, and everybody was like, yo, that's the thing that you don't do. Like, I literally got in by the skin of my teeth. So I just had to make it happen. I worked as a scribe for like a couple months, but when I was starting my last semester here, there was a bad hurricane. I was out of school for like 2 months. It like flooded real bad. We couldn't come back to campus. And so that took away some of my scribing time. And then the company that we was working for got bought out, switched to another company. He was working for minimum wage, $7.25. And then once they got bought out, it was like, if you didn't make the hours yet, we're going to bump you back another 3 months. I was like, I can't do this. I couldn't afford my apartment. So I had to move back with my parents. I worked at Bonefish Grill. Still didn't get any research position, none of that. But hey, that's how I paid for all my applications, the mini applications, and got my way into med school.
Yeah, and then like, so you got into one school, but like, it doesn't really matter so much like what school you go to. It matters what you do when you get in med school. Because like when JJ got into school, he's crushing it. Like literally one of the most successful med students I know. So it's like, yeah, getting your foot in the door is really important, but then like once you're in med school, it doesn't really matter like as much like where you went to. It matters what you did. So as long as you excel, like you should be fine. All right, so I thought this would be interesting. So I asked ChatGPT, what does it take to actually get into med school? And I mean, I was kind of surprised. Like it definitely had some good information. It was like, yeah, crush the MCAT. Let me see what it says. Like, it told a little bit about the application process, all the planning. So I was definitely surprised. I'm sure you could ask ChatGPT a lot more information and like, it'll let you know what to do. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Next slide. So this is like an overview of like what it takes from beginning to like get to a doctor. And like the main takeaway is that it's a long road. So like if you look at like the first point, that's like finishing undergrad. Second point is getting into med school. Then there's like 10 different points along the way, like step 1, step 2, residency, all of this stuff. So like the main takeaway is that like the journey is long, and a lot of people get into the mindset of like, oh, if I could just finish this, life would be so much better. If I could just get into med school, life will be like, a lot better. If I could just get into residency, like try not to fall into that trap, just enjoy the journey as you're going through it. And I think that helps a lot. Like, right now I'm in my 2nd year med school, which is, some people say it's like the hardest year of med school in general. And like, I'm probably happier now than I ever was before, because like, it's like, you just need to enjoy the moment, try not to get into that mindset where you're just kind of finish, like get to like the, just finish what you're trying to do. All right, so this is the general college timeline, and you can obviously stray from this a little bit. Like the recommended approach is freshman year, just get into college, try to like adapt to the environment, try to like, figure out a study plan so that you can get good grades. Then your sophomore year, you can try to do some research, do some extracurriculars. Junior year, so like ideally, if you want to get into med school, like the summer after you finish your senior year, you need to take the MCAT during the summer of your junior year, which is something I didn't realize. So like I ended up taking a gap year, but you want to get into med school the summer after, you have to study for the MCAT that junior year. keep up with your extracurriculars, try to keep good grades. And then senior year, that's when you're gonna apply to med school and you should like, interview in like the fall. Hopefully get in by spring. If that's that, then all you gotta do is just pass your classes. Like no one really cares. Like you don't need to like maintain a 4.0 GPA. Like if you're already accepted, just don't fail and just relax. And then that used to be like what the norm was, right? Like finishing out of your senior year and starting med school, that's not the norm anymore. Now it's more taking gap years. So I think I took a gap year. Did you?
Mhm.
Yeah. And then I think all of us probably took gap years. That's pretty much becoming the norm because like applying to med school 50 years ago was like a cakewalk compared to what it is now. It's insanely competitive. So like gap years are essential. Like when I took my gap year, I studied for the MCAT. I was working full time as a scribe. I was just trying to get all these extracurriculars in because I started late. I dropped out my first year, so that was definitely a speed bump along the way. I didn't even start being a pre-med until like my junior year, and so I needed a lot of extracurriculars I had to make up. So that's like the benefit of having a gap year. It was like I was able to knock out all those extracurriculars, apply when I was competitive, and then like the first half of your gap year, you're taking the MCAT, you're doing extracurriculars, doing all of this. Then the second half, like after you interview, you're accepted, like it's the best because you literally have 6 months to do nothing. So that year I got a motorcycle. I was just enjoying life. Like I really recommend taking a gap year. But like, if you want to go straight through and through, like props to you. I think it's definitely a lot more work going that way.
But time is a concept, all right? It's
Yeah.
not about when you start, it's about how you finish. So if you got to take 1 or 2 gap years, even if you got to do something you enjoy, or something you enjoy. Like I got classmates, they went to go teach English in other countries like China and where was it, in Thailand? Yeah. So they were like just doing things that they enjoy, stuff that they love, because once you're in med school, it's grind time. It's a lot of stuff that you don't have time for anymore. So it's just like, handle your business. If you're fighting to maintain good grades while you're in undergrad, and it's hard for you to like do all the things they require you to like cure cancer while you got to sleep and eat and like hang out with your friend and dog and stuff. And so if you gotta, if you're fighting for your life right now, finish strong and then take your gap years to, make up for lost time, for lack of better words, and work in office as a medical assistant or something to get those hours back.
So I know a lot of my classmates took gap years, and I don't think I've ever met a single person that's regretted it. Because it's like, it's honestly like a great time to like vacation, relax, do whatever you need to do. So yeah, highly recommend it. Okay, so this is what we're gonna get into today. There's like 10 building blocks that you need to do in order to get through the application process. And like, if you look at this, like, yeah, it looks like a lot, but one thing you got to realize is that like, this doesn't happen overnight. This is something that takes multiple years. You take it one step at a time. Eventually you'll check all those boxes and you'll get to where you need to. All right, so we're gonna start off with the pre-med requirements. So like, you don't actually have to be a science major to get into med school. You could do whatever you want. You could be a music major, you could be an English major, whatever it is, as long as you hit these requirements. Most people are biology majors, chemistry majors, et cetera. But like, as long as you do 1 year of biology, 1 year of general chemistry, a year of organic, and then a year of physics, and then math. And I think English is also required, but like you knock that out with whatever degree you do. So like, as long as you hit all of those, then you're good. One thing I will recommend, a lot of medical schools don't require biochem, but like you got to take biochem because when you take the MCAT, biochem is on, like it is at least 20% of the test. So like you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like biochem's not something you want to teach yourself. So just take it at Coastal. What I did was my senior year, I took biochem and I worked my butt off. And then right after I graduated, I started studying for the MCAT. And like biochem in college is so much harder than what it is on the MCAT. Like the MCAT, there's the analogy they give it is it's a mile wide but an inch deep. So like you just need to know, like the general ideas of biochem. You don't need to know like every amino acid structure like you do in college. So like if you crush your college biochem, like when you go to study for the MCAT, it's gonna be a lot easier.
Did you take a whole year of biochem?
Yes.
So like 1 and 2?
Yeah, I think at least here.
You're only, unless they change, when I was going through, it was only required that you did biochem 1 in lab. So you
I
didn't
think
have to
you're
do
right.
2
Yeah.
in lab.
Yeah.
So I didn't do biochem 2. I graduated early anyway. I was
Yeah.
gonna come back to finish. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I did biochem 1 in lab. And I wish I would have paid attention in that class, because that first class, foundations, which is all biochem,
Oh, yeah.
I ain't know nothing coming through that. I wish I would kick myself in behind every day. It's like, dang, I wish I would have paid attention in college. I was skating by, cramming. Ain't no cramming no more. We can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so biochem is just like, it's one of those things, you gotta learn it, then you gotta forget it, then you gotta keep, like the Krebs cycle, that's just how it goes. One piece of advice I could give y'all, just to save yourself time, just tattoo the Krebs cycle on yourself, so like, when foundations comes, like, you're good. All right, so we're gonna move on to shadowing. It's something I mean, I think every pre-med does this. So the way I recommend going about shadowing is 20 to 100 hours over multiple specialties. So like, you don't want to shadow one doctor for like 200 hours because there's like a point of diminishing returns. Like, you're only going to get so much out of shadowing, like when you're standing in the corner watching the doctor do what they got to do. Like, you're not going to learn a whole lot like that. And it's definitely something that like I made that mistake because like when I started shadowing, I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. So like I linked up with the cardiologist and I was shadowing like 20, 30 hours a week for like one summer. So like I probably got like 200 hours of shadowing in and I didn't learn a single thing. So like and it wasn't even that beneficial. So like when I came to applying to my application, I literally just cut those hours in half because it's like you apply to med school and you say you have 200 hours of shadowing it, like that's kind of like a red flag. Like, why would you spend that much time shadowing? So definitely split it up. Don't spend too much time on shadowing because like I don't think it's that important. Like I think getting clinical experience, scribing, being an EMT, CNA, like you're gonna learn so much more doing those things because you're actually involved in like the patient care process. You're actually doing stuff. So like you're gonna learn a lot more versus just standing there and like paying attention. And then,
Oh.
oh yeah, go ahead, Julian.
I was just gonna say that like a lot of people say like don't treat like the application to med school like a checkbox, but like this is the one where it is like actually a checkbox. Like this is just like you just have to do this and like no one like in interviews, nobody asks about it. But if you don't have it, then that's like a big like concern. So it's just one of those things you have to do really.
Exactly, yeah. And then for a lot of these like shadowing, volunteering, I just put like general, aim for these number of hours. Like that's not like the most important thing to do for all of these things is to do something meaningful. I just wanted to give like some kind of like a timeline. So like you're not shadowing a doctor for 200 hours, just to like give y'all guys like something to kind of aim towards, but like literally all of this is what you decide to do. And then one last thing about shadowing. So after COVID, I think it's gotten a lot harder. It was never that easy to begin with. Like unless you have connections with doctors, it's kind of hard to like get a shadowing gig. Like I remember when I was in undergrad, I literally knew 0 doctors. So I was cold calling offices, walking into offices with my application. And I mean, after like 200 doctors, like finally one of them was like, yeah, you can shadow. And I mean, it was cool. But like, yeah, it's definitely something that's difficult to get into unless you have some kind of tie. All right, so volunteering, right? With volunteering, you can pretty much do whatever you want. The world is your oyster. Again, like with shadowing, like there is no magic number, right? Like I just wanted to give y'all guys some kind of an idea, like at least do 100 hours, but like you can, like there are people whose application is mostly volunteering. Like you don't need to be a scribe or something. It really depends what you like have, like what you find to be meaningful. So like if you're volunteering and you love it, like do a couple, like you could do thousands of hours of volunteering as long as it's meaningful. So just, that's just something to like keep in mind. Like, yeah, try to at least hit this number of hours, but like really it's up to you what you do. And then try to do a couple of things for a long period of time versus like doing 10 different volunteer gigs like 6 months before your application, because like admission committees, they know what's up. Like, like they're not going like that. So yeah.
Any like fraternity sorority folk? Nobody. All right, yeah, and like spend those hours, right? So I spun it. So the max number of hours you could put was like 9,999. We haven't even lived that long. It was something like that. And so it was just, I put my fraternity and all the service that I did within there because you have your like national programs and requirements that you have. So I just fund that. And it was like, well, how did you accomplish this many hours? You ain't even been alive that long. I was like, I'll be out for the rest of my life. The work doesn't stop. I'm always, be a service to my community. So I just spun like that. So if you in a fraternity or sorority, go ahead, log those hours and, develop something from it. Make it meaningful. Actually, take ownership of what you do.
Killian, do you have anything to add?
No, I think like just the big thing for volunteering is that it really can just be like literally anything you want. Like when it comes down to like, it doesn't have to be like you're volunteering in the emergency department. Surely like it can, just because like that's like a nice thing to get two birds with one stone where you get volunteering plus some clinical exposure. But it's just one of those things that like they really just want to see that you volunteer doing something. Like you can get clinical experience elsewhere if that's what you want. But whatever you're passionate about is what I would do with volunteering. It's one of those things that like I wish I started earlier because I was definitely like just spending too many weekends like bringing people cups of ice in the emergency department as I was trying to get my application ready with volunteering. And I wish I just did something that I was like more passionate about.
All right, so clinical experience. I think for most people, this will be the biggest part of your application, your clinical experience. So like, kind of like with volunteering, like you could do whatever you want, really. What I did was I was a medical scribe in the ED, and like I'm definitely biased. That's the best clinical experience that you can get. It's one of the benefits of that. So like I'll kind of plug it in, but like like versus like something like being a CNA or EMT, like you need certifications to get to like work those jobs. Some of those can take like a couple of months, and like you're already in college, like that's a lot of work to do. So like the nice thing about scribing is like there's like really no like certification or anything you need.
Man, that training was so long.
I mean, so yeah, I was gonna, yeah, it's like a month to like 3 months, right? Depending on how fast you do it, but like literally, like I was going to school, doing the training at night, and then like, after like a couple months, like boom, you're a scribe. And like the really nice thing about it is like, yeah, you get a bunch of clinical experience, and then even better is like you get to build a lot of relationships with doctors. So like you could get a lot of really solid letters of recommendation through that. And especially if you're going to apply to DO also, which is something I recommend applying both MD and DO. Scribing might be a really good way to like actually meet DOs and get a DO letter of recommendation. So like the hospital I was working at, about half of the doctors were DOs. So that was a great way to get a letter of recommendation from them, because like that definitely gives you a leg up in the DO application. Only downside, and you touch on this, is like they don't pay you anything. It's kind of ridiculous. Like I was getting paid like $10 an hour. And funny thing is like I found out after like I got into med school and I like quit my job, like I found out I was actually getting paid $27 an hour. They just gave me $10 out of that. And then so like yeah, like the way it works is like the scribe companies, the hospital pays you an X amount of hours, and the scribe companies will just, give you like $10 out of it. Cause like they know how desperate like pre-meds are for experience.
Because you pay for the experience.
Yeah. So I mean like it's definitely a really good like way to get clinical experience, but yeah, the pay sucks. So like if you got bills to pay or something, like definitely scribing might not be the best thing to do. But literally you can do whatever you want. So EMT, CNA, you could be a scribe, you could be a hospice volunteer, you could volunteer in the ED for like thousands of hours and give out cups of ice to everybody and like do that. Like it really is up to what you do. And then similar to volunteering, pick a couple things and just stick with it long term. Don't just do 10 different things like 6 months before your application, because like it's really obvious.
And I'll say that I did scribing, I did private practice scribing, so I didn't go through like a scribe company, and they definitely paid better because like ours was 15, which was nice because and I had no training. They just kind of like threw me to the wolves and they were like start charting. So it was a lot of on the job learning.
Yeah, that is the thing about scribing, is like that I mean it's the same in the ED. Like you get like 5 like training shifts and they're like you're on your own, so like it's definitely a steep learning curve. Like I remember I was miserable going in like the first couple of months because of like nothing, and like you're expected to like type up notes for doctors. You don't know the lingo or anything, but like you slowly build up to it. And like that is one reason, like it's better than shadowing, because like shadowing, you're doing nothing, you're just watching. When you're actually in it, you have to like learn all the terminology, you know, like try to help out with like patient care and all that. You learn so much more. So like when I got into med school, like all the terms that they were throwing out, like hepatosplenomegaly, all this crazy stuff, like as a scribe, like it was all stuff I'd seen before. All the medications that they were talking about in med school, like it's all stuff I've seen before. So like it definitely gives you that like leg up.
Even with your charting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like when you gotta do like notes during your third year or even during your how to be a doctor class that I'll talk about later, it's like you gotta go through these clinical interactions and then afterwards like type a note on it. That's all you did during the scribe. So it really helps you out a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
And just one last thing, like clinical experience is one of those things that like you like 100% need. Like some things on your application, like you can kind of scoop by if you have like a ton of other things. Like you'll probably be on like the automatic reject list if you don't have like any clinical experience.
Yeah, like if you don't have any clinical experience, like how do you know you even want to be a doctor? Like, you know, you're just like you have to give them like some kind of evidence. Like I want to be a doctor because I've done X, Y, and Z, and like I know this is for me. If you've done nothing, then they're kind of like, you know, like, are you sure you want to be a doctor? Like you got to back it up with something. Okay, and then so research, like most of y'all, like clinical experience will be the biggest part of your application, but for like, you know, you gunners out there that want to go to like top tier programs like Harvard, Yale, et cetera, et cetera. Research will probably be like the biggest part of your application for like those certain things. Or like if you want to go to like a really research heavy medical school, research is a really big thing. Like it's a super valuable part of your application. I think, yeah, so the stat the AAMC gave me was 60% of MD applicants had some kind of research. Me and JJ are the exception. We didn't do a liquor research. What I did was I strategically built up my application like different parts. Like I had like 3 years of scribing, I had thousands of hours of volunteering, everything else except because I didn't want to do research. So, you know, everyone's different, like, but research is definitely a really big part of your application. One really good thing about research is that like publications that you get with research, they stay with you for the rest of your life. So like you go to med school, whatever research you did in undergrad, that's going to be on your resume. Like that's something you can build up. And like in med school, it's kind of like pre-med like 2.0. Like we need to do research. Like that's how we stand out. So like having never done research in undergrad, like it's a huge learning curve for me. So like if you can get involved with research early on, like that will definitely set you up.
But don't just do the research. Have something for it. Like submit a manuscript, make sure it's published, do poster presentations, like because I'm on the admissions committee now, and we give you the highest amount of points if you have a publication.
Yeah.
And then the next amount of points if you've done like a poster presentation at a national conference. And then below that is if you've done at least a year of research and working with the team, but you didn't have nothing for it, and then you have 0. So try to get a pub. If not, do presentations.
Yeah. And then one thing that I thought was interesting was and I don't think MUSC considers themselves as like super research heavy school, but like when I was looking at the MSR, it said that MUSC they received like about $100 million in research grants. So like they are a research powerhouse. So like if you want to get in MUSC, definitely having some kind of research will definitely help you out with that because they're really big on research. Like that was one thing that really shocked me.
They asked me why did I not do any research. I was like, you see that GPA? I was grinding. I was fighting for my life.
All right, this is the big bad one.
Yeah, so the MCAT, yes. I know it's a big scary exam, but we all have to take it at some point. And here I just kind of laid out some of like the statistics behind it. So the exam is 4 sections, and I think they're each 90 minutes long, if I remember. There were like 59 questions each. But they're broken up where the first section is your general chemistry, your organic chemistry, and physics. Then you're gonna hop into like an amped up SAT reading section, which is your critical analysis and reasoning skills, which I thought was like the most annoying section of the entire exam. And after that, you have your biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, which is essentially just a big biology and biochem section. And then the last one is your psychology and sociology. And so it's scored from 472 to 528, with 528 being as high as you can get. And so the average right now is a 502. So like if you took everyone that took the exam, the average score is a 502. And so there's like a little discrepancy here with like where people are scoring and like where people are like actually getting into medical school. So the average applicant has a 506. So that's already above the average score for the MCAT. Then the average person who's actually matriculating into med school has a 512. And so it might be kind of hard to see, but I could put kind of like the percentiles at the bottom left here. But the average person that's getting into med school is scoring in the 83rd percentile, which is kind of like a, I don't know, whenever you see those numbers, it's kind of like daunting that like only like 17 out of 100 people will be like scoring at like the average to like get in. But then it's important to think that these are like averages, of course, and that for every person who's scoring like 520 that gets in, another person that's scoring a 504 gets in, for example. And that there's so many parts to your application that, you know, if the MCAT's like a hiccup for you, then you can build it back up and say like a really great GPA, or you have 2 years of scribing behind you, or you have a publication in research. And so, but on the other hand, I personally think that it's also one of those things that like where if you do like really well, it can offset like say like a poorer GPA because you know you've proved some sort of academic competence by scoring well on this exam. If your GPA is say like not where you want it to be either. And so yeah, I just think it's one of those things that like scary at first, but once you get into like the groove of studying for it, I think it becomes a lot less daunting.
But please take it seriously. I did not take it seriously, and I paid for it. I got that $4.99. Like, for instance, physics. I didn't know how much physics you actually had to do for the test. I took physics my freshman and sophomore year. I took it mad early. And then I never looked at physics again. And prepping for the test. And they was asking me, I remember this torque equation, all these equations. I was like, there's no way I'm going to remember this. So every physics question I saw, I'm going to be honest, I hit C. When in doubt, see way out. Every physics question, I was like, there's no way. When I was cramming for the MCAT, there was no way I was going to learn physics. So please, if you take physics later, all right, internalize that. But don't be like, take that thing serious. You got to know your physics.
Oh, yeah.
Did you take your MCAT more than once?
Nah, I took it once.
And you got it with the point?
I got in with $4.99.
Yeah.
But
So-
more people get more competitive now. So it was feasible for me, not everybody else. So please take that MCAT seriously. 500 at least get you can get an interview almost anywhere with 500 at least.
Especially
That's a
if you
minimum
have
requirement.
Yeah, and then I was one of the lucky people. I got to, you know, take the MCAT twice because you know, it was so much fun the first time. I decided to go back the second. And going back to what I said earlier, like when you look at the MCAT, right? Like biochem, super high yield, probably the most important topic on the whole test. Because biochem will be on the biochem section, right? Obviously, but it's also on the chem physics section. So like there'll be 2 sections with biochem. So it just helps out with that. And then psych, those are give me points. Like if you do next slide, we'll have like a bunch of resources, but if you do like the Khan Academy stuff and all of that, those are just free points. So like, you know, maximize those. Cars just suck. I mean, like that's the reading section. You just got to get through it. I mean, I hated that. But
I also
yeah,
did not take psych.
Yeah.
It wasn't a required. No,
I don't think it is.
somehow they put me in economics. Economics fulfilled my psychology, sociology required. I'm a freshman. I didn't know what I was doing. They just put me. I want to do still work here, but he put me in that class, so I didn't take psych. So most of my MCAT study was just grinding through psych, trying to understand all those concepts. So it should be given, but I did better on psych than the cars. So do that. And that, well, you still got that chart outside your door?
Of course I do.
That chart. So it's like, all right, you know, how much slack you can give if you have a certain GPA or a certain MCAT score. So just that chart. I remember I was like, all right, my GPA is solid. So the lowest I could get is a 499. And lo and behold, I got that. So, just take that into account. And docs, when we were on the admissions committee yesterday, it was like, well, if they scored this on the MCAT, that predicts how they're gonna do on step one. So just please take the MCAT seriously. I did not pay for it, but I'm still here.
Mhm.
But I'm standing here to do whatever I didn't do.
Yeah.
And then these are just the MD schools in South Carolina, like where their averages are. So for Greenville for this last class, the average was actually I think this was me and Yusuf's class when they updated this. But so the average MCAT score was a 511 for our class. And then for MUSC's most recent class, the average was a 511 as well. And then for USC and Columbia, it was a 508. And then I believe VCOM, which is the DO school here, I believe I believe it's 500 is the average for VCOM, but I could be wrong. But that was the last number that I read on their website. I just couldn't fit it on this slide and make it look pretty like this. So
Yeah, so I remember when I was like looking into applying, one interesting thing about BCom is they actually care more about your GPA than your MCAT. So like, if like you didn't do that well on the MCAT, but you have a solid GPA, like BComs could be a really good option. So that was I think they're definitely the anomaly. Like I don't think there's any other school I can think of that does that. And one scary thing is like, okay, so if you look at USC Greenville, our school, their average is a 511. I remember the year when I applied, their average was like a 509. So like it literally jumped up 2 points within this last year. I think when I applied it, they called it the Fauci effect, like because COVID hit and like literally there was like 30% extra like med students applying to med school. I don't know what the reason for that was, but like I remember the year I applied, it was the most competitive year like ever. And I think every year it's getting slightly more competitive, but like that year was just insane.
Well, also too, during COVID, there were a number of schools that waived the MCAT, so you could apply without taking it.
Right, I think, so the waived MCAT thing, that was only a Caribbean thing. There is no American school that I know of that actually waived the MCAT, because like, the thing about med schools, they're like, they can afford to be selected, like they don't really, need to like lower their standards for that, and like COVID, if anything, it like raised the competitiveness. So like Caribbean schools, I know they definitely waive the MCAT, but we're gonna talk a little bit more about them in that bit. But American schools, like they didn't really care, because I mean like they can kind of afford to do that. When you got like 40 people duking it out for like one seat, like you can afford to be a little bit competitive. And then yeah, if you guys are worried about the MCAT, we got your back. We got some high yield resources for you guys.
Killing
yeah,
this
it's
is man.
Oh yeah.
You told me you was the man. You came over the Anki deck. What? Talk about that.
Yeah, and then y'all probably don't know this, but like Killian is the Anki king. Like in our class, bro, like I don't know anybody that does Anki more than this guy. Like, I mean, he's like the Anki wizard. So like, yeah, he'll definitely give you guys some good advice for the MCAT.
yeah, feel free to reach out on like Instagram or email, whatever's easier for you guys. My Instagram's just my first and last name, but I love helping out people with the MCAT because I really think like if you use these like methods, it like can really trivialize like a lot of the exam and really just like get you into that like I can score well enough to get into medical school just by using these like simple tactics. And one of them I think is like the greatest thing on the planet. We could go into like a 4-hour discussion on these flashcards, but it's called Anki, which is essentially like a spaced repetition software where you get a flashcard, you rate it as whether you got the flashcard right or wrong, and it essentially plans out all your studying for you to where the things you're getting wrong all the time, you're going to see more often, and the things that it's going to show you less. And so I actually just gave a talk to the M1 students that was like 3 hours long about how to use this. So it's definitely like a time investment to learn how to use it properly, but it like pays in like dividends because I use it for the MCAT like for like 5 months. I use it every single day in medical school. And there's a big YouTube channel called the On King that like goes over how to use it and how to do everything. I linked like a playlist where he has like a specific one, how to use the flashcards for the MCAT. And then the like in the past, like a really popular flashcard set that people used was called the Miles Down flashcard set. But On King actually took that one and like his team like updated it. And so now it's the On King MCAT deck. And right now it's $5 a month. But it's one of those things where like it's $5 a month to keep it updated. Like you can pay $5, cancel your subscription, and then you just have it. It won't update, but like the MCAT studying is short enough to where you probably like it probably doesn't matter. And then there's Khan Academy for Psych Soc is like a really big thing that like is super helpful. They have a 300-page document that covers like all the Khan Academy videos, or you can go ahead and watch all the videos if you want. And then there's a bunch of flashcard sets too online that cover all of that. And I linked one of them here. And then after you finish like reviewing everything, like the next best step is to hop into practice problems. And that's kind of the case like for all of med school too, that once you learn something, you probably like should immediately try to like apply it, because it's easy to like memorize something and not really know like what's the context of how you could do this. Like this even happens to me like today, like we're in our hematology block and they tell us all these lab values and I'm like, okay, I can roll with this. And then once they show me like 60 at once, I'm like, okay, those are a lot of things staring at me. And without like practicing, it's like, if the first time I saw that was on our exam, it'd be a rough time. But other than that, the AAMC, who are the people who like actually write the exam, they have a set of 6 full practice exams. It was 5 when I took it, but they put a recent one out, a new one out recently. And they have like hundreds and hundreds of practice questions. And the general like rule of thumb is to use these as close, like within like that last month of studying, because you want to be like in the mindset of like how they like to ask questions. Because if you're using UWorld, which is like another question bank, sure, you could go through that, but they might phrase things like a little different than the AAMC would. It's kind of like when you're going through like an undergrad exam, for example, and if there's multiple professors writing the questions, you can kind of pick out like, oh, this is from this professor, so I know like what he wants as the answer. And it's kind of similar to that. So once you see so many AAMC practice problems, you start to kind of gauge like, oh, when they say this, they want me to move into this direction, and that by itself could even get you some points on the exam. So that's all I really have to say about it.
Yeah, and then one thing I think is really good is like, yeah, like Killian, I started using Anki when I was taking the MCAT. And like the thing is, like if you look at any med school across the country, at least 80% of the kids, and this is probably a low number, are using Anki. So it's like a tried and true method to actually like learn a large volume of stuff. So if you can learn how to use Anki for the MCAT, like you are setting yourself up for med school. Because I remember when I started, there were a bunch of kids that had never used it before, and like first class, like everyone's trying to like get their bearings. Because Anki's not like Quizlet, it's not like super pretty. Like there's definitely like there's definitely like a learning curve that comes with it. So like if you can learn how to use it early on, like you're set. But yeah, like these are super high yield resources for the MCAT. I remember it took hours of like research to actually like find these like on my own. So like yeah, definitely check these out when the time comes for the MCAT. Okay, so this part of that, like this part of the presentation is gonna get kind of boring because I'll talk about letters of recommendation, application, just like, a general overview of everything that you need to do. So letters of recommendation, you need them for medical school. Every school has like a different requirement. Like some schools will want like 2 or 3 science professors, a certain number of doctor letters, but like when it comes to recommendations, you can get them from pretty much everyone. Like professors and doctors are the most common, but you can also get letters from like a person you volunteered with, like the head of the volunteer gig, or you can get it for like from someone that like was in charge of your tutoring or something like that. Like you can literally get it from anybody that knows you really well. You can't get it from your mom or dad, but pretty much like it's up to you where you get your letters. So the most common like letters that you need are at least 2 science professors, 1 non-science professor. I don't know how accurate that is because I can't really think of any schools that ask like a specific non-science letter of recommendation, because like I'm assuming most of you guys are like biology majors or something like that, and like you guys stop taking all your non-science classes like your first or second year. So like those are really hard to come by. So I think most schools just say 1 letter that is like it could be a doctor or it could be a math professor or something like that. Like I think a lot of schools have definitely gotten rid of that requirement. And then also I think it's really helpful to have letters from doctors. I know some schools require it. With the DO schools, I think there's a handful of DO schools that actually require a letter of recommendation from a DO. I think most schools would just take like a letter from any doctor, but I think having the DO letter of recommendation definitely like puts you above like where most people are. So that's like where scribing can be super beneficial, especially in the ED, because like half the doctors you work with will probably be DOs. So yeah, science professors, doctors, there's a minimum, like for most schools, I think the minimum you can have are 3 letters. The maximum are 5 letters, and then to reach that minimum, I think pretty much every school, like if you get a committee letter, which, do you guys know what a committee letter is? Yeah.
I do.
Yes. Yeah, so a committee letter is basically just like compilated, like it's like a big letter written by like your college, university, and it's like there's a bunch of professors on the letter, so like it basically covers the minimum that you need for schools. Like you can obviously submit a committee letter and then get some extra letters on top of it. But the committee letter will, hit that minimum for you. And it's something that I highly recommend getting. Personally, I didn't get a committee letter just because like the time for me didn't work out. I was taking the MCAT, and then like for the committee letter at CCU, like you had to fill out a bunch of questions, give them your MCAT, like it's
Yeah,
definitely not.
interview.
Got
Yeah.
an interview.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not something you can do overnight. And like, I took my MCAT, worked on my application and applied. So like, I didn't have a lot of time, so I just got all these letters from like different writers. So like a committee letter is something I recommend. I remember I applied to Penn State and they specifically asked, like, if you don't have a committee letter and your school offers one, why is that the case? So there are some schools that are like, hey, if you have committee letters, like, why aren't you using them? So like, I didn't even get an interview from them, so like, that might have been why. But yeah, 5 is the max you can get, and then definitely quality over quantity. Don't just hit the max if they're all mediocre, So yeah, and I'm trying to think. I think there was one other thing I have to say. Oh, so you need at least 2 signs for letters. When you ask for letters, definitely have some backups, because I had at least 2 professors ghost me. Like, I took class and I was like, yo, okay, I'm gonna ask you for a letter. Is that cool? And they're like, yeah, man, no problem. Then when the time came, like, they never hit me up. So like, definitely have backups, because like a lot of people will ghost, or like a couple of professors, like, they might retire, just like the same year you go to apply. So like, always have like a couple backups if you can.
And remember, with our committee, if the professor you're close with is on the committee, they can't write you a separate letter. And I was scrambling last minute for my letter, and someone was kind enough to drop out the committee to write my letter. Because I needed something like in a day or 2. And that person was kind enough to do that for me. So yeah, just something to consider.
Yeah, and then definitely if you guys are like early on, like freshman, sophomore, definitely try to like build relationships with your professor. So I remember I spent a lot of time in like office hours and stuff. And like, I think that definitely helps out. Like, I mean, like initially, like my goal was just to like, I went to office hours just because I was trying to do really well in class. Like, I wasn't trying to like sneakily get a committee letter or anything like that. It was like, I was just genuinely trying to like do well. So like, if you build those relationships early on, like when the time comes to get a letter, like you're set. So like, thankfully, like when I applied, I, built a lot of relationships with a bunch of different professors. So like I had like a couple extra letters just in case. And like, that was beneficial because a couple of people ghosted me. So, it's all good.
As a letter writer, my recommendation there is to make sure that you follow up. Like, make that initial contact,
Right.
that initial agreement with that faculty member, but then like, maybe 2 weeks before it's due, go ahead and send them a reminder, because we got a lot of stuff on our plates too. So
Okay.
it's nice to have that little, hey, you remember you were going to write me a letter, just wanted to make sure you didn't need anything additional to finish that up.
Yeah, so what I did was, at the end of my senior year after I graduated, I sent like all the professors, get a letter of recommendation from. I just sent them an email and like let them know like, hey, in about a year from now, I'm gonna be applying to med school. Like, is it okay if you'll write me a letter? And they're like, yeah, no problem. Just give me a heads up. So like, and I was even like preemptive with it. Like, I didn't give them a heads up like 2 weeks before my application was due. Like a couple of months before my application was due, I was like, hey, I need this letter by this date, just so like, you can get that taken care of. Because I think, letters are the most annoying part of the application because you can control every other part, right? Like MCAT, you control your essays, that's all on you, but like letters, that's like something that you need from someone else. So like, just be like really preemptive with it, like, you know, try to get the letters as early as possible. And that'll definitely help you out. And then one thing I definitely want to plug in is this, it's this website called Interfolio. Super high yield for like getting letters of recommendation. So like, what it does is like, you know, you send your letter writer like a link, and I think all you have to do is like send them a link and they can upload the letter directly to that. And then once they upload the letter, you can send it to like the AMCAS, ACOMAS, the Texas Medical School application automatically. And the really nice thing about what Interfolio does is like, when you get your letter, you cannot see what's on there. So like, you ask your person, you have no idea what they put on there. And there's a certain, there's a couple things you need from every letter. You need it to be on a letterhead from like a university or hospital. You need their signature. You need to make sure that the letter writer actually includes your name. So like, there's a couple things that you need. And what the nice thing about Interfolio is like, yeah, you can't see the letter, but it'll like show you like, hey, this letter is a letter of recommendation. This includes your name in it. This has an official letterhead. This is signed. So like it like lets you know all of that. And then if you don't have any of those things, like you can just email your person and just be like, hey, could you include this on a letterhead? Could you sign this? Makes it really easy, because the other way would be like, you would have to have, your letter writer would have to create an account with AMCAS, which is application service. They upload the letter, there's like no quality check, and then you submit your letter, and then you find out that like, hey, it's missing a letterhead, then you gotta go back and they gotta do all of that. It's a lot of like back and forth. So definitely get Interfolio. You can get all of your letters stored on there, and then you could just send them to your application service, like, you know, all at once, whenever you want. So it definitely helps out. The only downside is that it costs $60 a year, but like, I think it's super worth it. I had 5 people write me letters and only one of them got it right the first time. So it's like, yeah, it's definitely tough. So like, you know, it was like little things, like some people would forget letterheads, they forget signatures. Surprisingly, the one person that got it right was like this really old doctor who doesn't know how to use computers, but he don't know Mark, like, you know, so yeah. It's definitely something I recommend getting.
I also used Interfolio, and I definitely think I would have lost my mind, like with dealing with the letters without it. And
Okay.
I'll also say that I had 4 letters for me, and literally every single person got it wrong. And
Yeah.
Interfolio told me.
JJ, how was your letter writing experience? How does it go for you?
I hope it went okay. I didn't even know. I asked a bunch of people for letters and I sent out the information. And I think the committee got my letter. Somebody in here got my letter. No, I asked like 5 people and only 3 of them went through. And I would follow up with people, so I hope it went okay. Yeah, I only got 3, and I was surprised. I was like, dang, that person went, anybody else get it?
But the committee letter was fine.
The committee letter was fine.
And that's all you-
Letterhead was the big one that I think that it was always the letterhead. Like they would just write the letter and not include like a letterhead. I think that was every single one for me.
Yeah, that was definitely like the bane of my existence. But yeah, if you can get a committee letter, like that's it. Like that's all you need minimum.
It's so weird to me to hear this because like, I don't understand how faculty don't know, and maybe it's doctors that like, how do you not know how to write a recommendation?
Yeah, I don't. It's fine.
Okay,
But I'm sure the good people here have written enough letters to know how the game goes. So at least the CCU people should get it right?
Yeah. All right, the application process. So I definitely laid out like the ground rules for it, because like the application process, like you think it'd be kind of simple, like you just upload your GPA, you write a couple essays, you move on, but like the process is crazy complicated and there's like multiple applications you got to fill out. So we're just gonna briefly walk through it real quick. And yeah. So it all starts with your primary application, right? And then there's a couple different flavors for primary application. You got the AMCAS, which is for ND schools, ACOMAS, which is for DO schools, and then there's the Texas application, which is unique because it's one application, but it gets sent to all the different Texas schools. And I think it's like one fee and then boom, it goes to all the different medical schools, whereas like all these other applications, you have to pay for each school you apply to, and that builds up quickly. So before you guys go out and like apply Texas schools, one thing to note is that they accept 93% of their students from in-state. So unless you have ties to Texas, just don't apply. I didn't waste my time with it. And then one thing that sucks is all the different application services, they all have like different requirements for like how long their essays are. So like, you know, you need to like change up all your activities and stuff for each of the different services. I didn't include Texas, but I think like if you do want to apply Texas, one thing to note, their application is only 300 characters per activity, whereas all the other ones are like 600-700. And then what the AMCAS does, which is the MD application, right? The MD application, all of your activities and stuff, they give you 700 characters to fill out your activities. You can have 15 activities. I mean, if you have 15 activities, you're a rock star. I had like 10, which I think is like still pretty solid. But and then with those activities, they give you 3 activities that you can like choose to be your most meaningful. So with the most meaningful ones, you get an extra 1,300 characters to talk about it. So you get like 2,000 characters total. The DO application, it's 600 characters per activity, and there's unlimited activities you can have. So yeah. And then there's more to it. So like those are your activities. Then you got the personal statement, which the prompt for that is, why do you want to go to medical school? So it's about, 5,300 characters. And if your personal statement is you like science and you want to help people, well, congratulations, you're probably going to get rejected. Like it's got to be deeper than that. You can't just say like, I want to help people, because like literally there's so many different like careers where you're helping people. Like janitors help people, mechanics help people. Like it needs to be specific to like, why do you want to be in medical school? Because you can help people a million different ways. So in your personal statement, you got to go deeper than that. You got to talk about like your experiences, like how those experiences helped you, solidify your pursuit of medicine. Why do you want to go to medical school versus being a nurse or a PA or a chiropractor or whatever? It has to be like a lot deeper than that. So please don't tell them like you like science and you want to help people, because that's not going to go well. And then with your personal statement and activities, you want to tell stories. You don't just want to be like, hey, like, I'm really smart, I like helping people, et cetera, et cetera. Like you got to back it up with stories. And also like that makes it more interesting. Like if you were in the admission committee and like you're reading all these applications and like this person just lists out like all their great qualities, like that's boring. But like if the person like is like, hey, like I'd like to help people, and then they tell you a story about how they help somebody, like, as a volunteer, like that's more impactful. So focus on telling stories, like even for all your activities. I remember when I applied, like I didn't like prescribing, I didn't just tell them like, oh yeah, I did charts, I looked at labs, I did this and that. I just told them stories like, hey, I was working as a scribe and I saw my first cardiac arrest, and like this is how it went. And like, like after that, I kind of realized like I want to do medicine, or et cetera, like something like that. It has to be kind of a story. And that's also like really helpful. Like, I think, yeah, I think like that's the general thing for most of it. Like I think if you look at every application of the person that's not accepted, like they're all telling stories with their application. So yeah, the big thing is, unlike JJ, you gotta apply early. Like that is super high. There's so many people that'll like have like 520 MCAT, 4.0 GPAs, but if they apply at the very end of the cycle, like there's a lot of people that have to reapply just because it's such a big deal. So like you want to apply as early as possible. When I was looking into this for the MD application, which is the biggest one, during the peak times, like late June, it could take 4 to 6 weeks to like for your application to go through. So like the DO application is quicker, but the application service, it opens up 1 month early. So like, when it opens up, fill out all your activities, grades, extracurriculars, and then the day like the application service opens, submit it, because that's definitely the best way.
One thing about the personal statement, the Williams method, he had this method that carries me through, so correct me if I'm wrong, where he said, take 3 pieces of paper. Each of those paper pick something about yourself, something you're passionate about, and make a whole page of that. And do that with the other, and then the other. All right, and then condense that all into a paragraph essay, you know, with a thesis statement, because this, and this, and try to do it around like 1 page. Did I miss any? I'm sure it's cleaner than that.
Okay, 3 pages.
Uh-huh.
At the top of the page, put the top of each page, the one characteristic about yourself, one quality about yourself, something that you think is beneficial that would bode well for your future success. Okay, a characteristic, like I'm dedicated, I'm compassionate, I'm dynamic. And then the rest of the page, you make actual lines of evidence to support that assertion. Right, so you say, I'm dedicated, I wake up every morning and I make lunch. Or whatever it is you do it, right, something like that. And now each of those pieces of paper, the top is a thesis statement. The rest is supporting information. Each of those is a paragraph. You throw on a first paragraph that says, here are 3 things about me that are good. And then you have a last paragraph that says, there were 3 things about me that are good. And that's your first statement.
And you cannot go wrong with that.
Hey, JJ.
What up? Come on, I remember this.
Affirmation, baby.
Come on.
All right, so just when you thought the primary is bad enough, there's a secondary application. So the secondary applications are school specific, and you might be asking like, why are schools sending out secondary applications, but you already spent all this time on your primary? The answer is money, because every single time, like every school you apply to, you're gonna get a secondary for it. Like I could apply to Harvard and they're gonna send me a secondary. It doesn't matter if you're competitive, because with every secondary, you gotta pay like $50 or something for them to even like look at your application. So it's a huge money pit. Every school, they have like a specific number of essays, different prompts. So like for every school you apply to, that's something to keep in mind. Like if you apply to a lot of schools, you kind of want to start writing your secondaries early, because it can be like super overwhelming. And the nice thing is if you look online, like you can pretty much find the prompts to every school ahead of time. And very few schools actually change their prompt year to year. So just try to like write them early. And after you write enough, a lot of it is like copy and paste, because most schools are asking like generic questions, like, why do you want to go to our school? Why do you want to be a doctor, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like nothing really crazy. But yeah, those are secondaries. And then, okay. Yeah, so secondaries that's like the whole application in a nutshell. Now, these are just some stats about schools. So MD schools are typically more difficult to get into than DO schools or Caribbean schools. With that, like if you want to do something super competitive, like you want to be a plastic surgeon, a dermatologist, orthopedics, ENT, whatever, MD schools are the way to go. It's definitely possible with the DO school, but it's a lot harder. Also, like if you want to try to if say you want to be like an internal medicine doctor, but you want to be at Harvard, right? Versus like a normal place, like MD will definitely help you out a lot more. Just some numbers for you. So in 2022, there were 62,000 applicants. Out of those, 22,000 got accepted. So that's 36% acceptance rate, which like that looks terrible, but that's what it is. The GPA was a 3.7, and then the MCAT was a 512, which is the 84th percentile, which is like crazy because it's like 84th percentile amongst pre-meds. That's not just like 84th percent like in all of college. Like I'm sure most of you guys are probably top percentile like in all of coastal, but like that's among pre-meds. One piece of advice I would give you guys is like if you have don't let the numbers scare you, because like I lost like many nights of sleep over like these numbers. And like if you have a solid application, it's gonna be a solid application. Like regardless, I thought I was like super worried, but like when I applied, like I got a bunch of interviews and stuff. Like despite the numbers, like if you have a good application, a lot of schools are gonna receive it well. So just focus on building a good application. DO schools. So generally, I would recommend all of you to apply MD and DO, regardless of what you want to do, right? Like say you only unless you're 1,000,000% sure you're going to be a plastic surgeon and that's the only thing that's going to give you guys like purpose in life, then apply MD, because like your chances of getting in will be easier. But like say like you don't get in like your first cycle, apply DO, because like MD and DO, like they're equal. They have the same amount of training. Actually,
You'll
DOs,
do more training.
actually, so that's what I'm gonna get into, like, DOs have 300 to 500 hours of OMM training on top of everything you're doing in medical school. So if anything, they have the short end of the stick, because they gotta do more work. And it's harder to match into like more specific, like more competitive specialties. But also, like, one thing that a lot of DO schools emphasize for primary care, so not emergency, internal medicine, family medicine, things like that, that's what they really emphasize. So if you can see yourself doing that, like, apply both, because they're really pretty much equal, like, you're gonna get the same training regardless of where you go. It just helps, it just helps with like specific, like, competitive specialties. And getting into a DO school is not easy, like, it's still getting into med school, like, it's insanely hard. I can't see the numbers, but it's like, yeah, so DO schools in 2021, 27,000 people applied and 8,000 people got in. So that's a 31% matriculant rate, which is even less than the MD, but like, it still is easier to apply DO because of the stats, like 3.5 GPA, MCAT of 505, which is 60th percentile. So applying DO is a little bit easier. And then Caribbean. This is
Yeah, so if there are one certain schools that I would recommend avoiding, it would be these. You're always gonna hear stories about, my brother's uncle's sister went to the Caribbean and now she's a brain surgeon at Harvard, and it's like, okay, sure. But statistically speaking, you are really shooting yourself in the foot, because these schools are like insanely expensive. And then at the end of the day in medical school, you want to have a residency that you've gotten into so that you can continue your training and actually have a job and become a board certified doctor. And you can see on these charts that, like, for MD seniors and DO senior students, like the match rate to get into residency is pretty much like, like 95% of people are getting in their first try, which is really good. But when you look at, so IMG means International Medical Graduate, and we're going to look at US IMG, which essentially means you're like someone from the US that's attending a school in the Caribbean, and their match rate for residency is like 50%. So like half of the students that are graduating are not getting a residency spot. And then you're just a dude with an MD degree that can't go and practice medicine because he never got a residency. And then on top of that, just by virtue of being like at a Caribbean school, it really locks you into like certain fields. Like, it's borderline like impossible to get into some fields like neurosurgery, orthopedic surgery is really difficult, dermatology, ENT. And so, I would only like even like consider attending these schools if like you tried like 3 separate application cycles to get into a US school, and you still just like, I want to be a doctor, this isn't working, because like Caribbean schools will take literally everyone. Like, as long as you have a pulse, you're getting into one of these schools. And it's just like, and I want to like also put this point in that, like, I'm sure you guys have gotten like emails from these schools. They're very like, I think they're very predatory in their marketing, because they'll list like, oh, 90% of our students matched into residency this year. And it's like, oh, okay, that's good. But what they're not saying is that after the second year, half the students they kicked out because they couldn't pass the first board exam. And then after the third year, they kick another half out because they couldn't pass the second board exam. And now out of the 1,000 that started, 100 are left and 90 of them matched. And so they say they have a 90% match rate, but then there's 900 students who were kicked out. And so just, I don't know, I would just take these schools off the radar. Don't even look at them. Don't think about them anymore after this talk.
all right. So the interviews, that is best part of the actual application process. So generally, like, when you're preparing for interviews, just have answers to like all the basic questions, like why do you want to be a doctor? Why do you want to go to that school? Strengths, weaknesses. What helped me was like recording myself as I'm answering the questions. Also, Student Doctor Network, they have like a list of interview questions for pretty much every medical school out there. Like, a bunch of people will just like post like what interview questions they got. So like, check that out. Come up with answers to those and like just rehearse yourself. make sure you're not like super like rehearsed and like robotic, like, like prepare a little bit, but like don't like memorize like a paragraph, like, if someone asks you like, why do you want to be a doctor? Don't like have a paragraph just ready to like, like spit out. Like, make sure it's like natural, like it flows and all of that. One bonus tip I would give is when you're interviewing, like if someone asks you like a hard question, it's okay to be like, it's okay to ask them like, hey, can I have a second to think about that? Like you don't need to just spit out an answer as soon as they ask you a question. Also doing a lot of mock interviews helps. I think Coastal, do you guys like give mock interviews for applicants? Yeah, so definitely do a couple mock interviews because like in your mind, you might be like, yeah, I got this, like I know how to do an interview, and then like you do a mock interview and it's like you have no idea what to say. So definitely practice it.
I think the career services offers that too.
Okay, yeah, so definitely check them out because mock interviews help a lot. And then boom, you do everything right, and then you end up in med school. So, we're just gonna talk about what med school is actually
I'll
like.
be really quick, all right, because you gotta take the MCAT, you gotta apply first, but when you get to med school, this is a little quick breakdown as to the things that you will experience.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah, a lot of Anki.
It's a lot of Anki through and through. So med school is 4 years. Sometimes life happens, you gotta take a leave of absence, you gotta repeat a year, but either way, generally, it should be 4 years, right? Your first and second years are your preclinical years, you're in the classroom, but you also have your how to be a doctor class, where you'll do like clinical skills and also do patient encounters like every week or so. So the way that it's split up, there's a couple different ways that schools are doing it. You have a systems-based and you have a non-systems based. So think about it. You have your heart, it beats, right? It pumps blood, atria, ventricles, and all those things, right? And there are certain physiologic things that play into that, right? And if one part is cut off in the process, all right, that's your pathology. So you have your physiology, you have your pathology, you have your anatomy, right? And then you have like drugs that can treat these things. So all that to say, the systems based, you learn the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how to treat all those things within each section. So with cardiology or pulmonology or renal, right? At a non-systems based, your first year will be learning the anatomy and all of the good that can happen. And then your second year is a second pass where you learn all of the bad and the ugly. So more schools are like our school, we just switched to the systems based, but traditionally we were non-systems based. And also some schools still have it in a block schedule. So we learn all of our things within a module and like with each class. And there's one test for each module, give or take, unless you have anatomy, so then you gotta do lab on top of that. Other than that, you have one test for each module. Some schools have it where it's split up into different classes, and then you have to take multiple tests within a week. So something to think about. I don't think that's very useful, but whatever works for you. But we are now in integrated systems based in like a year and a half non-block style, right? And then, like I said, you have all of those years, you're taking your first board exam, you have 3 board exams, step 1, step 2, and step 3. So everything that you learned from M1 and M2, you have to remember it or relearn it over a dedicated period of study so that you can take your USMLE step 1 exam. Caveat, ever since I started, we were the first class to do it. Step 1 is now pass fail. Historically, step 1 was like this cutoff, right? So if you want to do a competitive specialty, if you didn't have above a certain score, they just threw you out, right? So now this pass fail, it has moved on to stuff like step 2, letters of recommendation. But either way, gist of it is M1, M2, preclinical, you're in the classroom, you're learning all the things about medicine, bright eye, bushy tail, and then you're also having your how to be a doctor class. And, you do stuff like extracurriculars, leadership, research, stuff like that to kind of build yourself up. And that next slide was just me basically saying like the different types of curricula, but I went through that. We're not going to belabor the point. Then next, you have your M3 year, your clinical, you're in the hospital. So you have different rotations of different services, and it's varying weeks. Some are 8 weeks, some are 6, some are 4, some are 2. right? You gotta go through internal medicine, surgery, family medicine, neurology, psychiatry, emergency medicine, and pediatrics. And then within those, most of those, except for emergency medicine, has a shelf exam, which is a standardized test of everything throughout each rotation, right? So, and then also you have your clinical exam, your OSCE for each rotation, right? And then after you do all of those things, you have your second board exam at the end of your third year or the beginning of your fourth year. And that's step 2. So everything that you learn throughout your third year and apply, you know, you're in there, you're doing the rounds, you get into the hospital like 5, 6 in the morning, you going to see your patients, write a note on them, present it to the team, and then you go with the doctor around the house. I hate rounding, but it's got to be done. But you know, you do your rounds, or you could be out in the clinic sometimes, and you know, they'll let you participate. Or in surgeries, you're in the OR, they might let you close some like ports or whatever. But you know, you're just being exposed to how the hospital works and all the things that go into it. But all of this is to prepare you for your step 2 exam. And then you have your M4 year where I am currently. So you really don't have to pick a specialty until like your end of your third year, beginning of fourth year. But I also have, so I've started M4 in May. I got a homegirl, she just changed her mind on her specialty in July. So so stuff like that. But you don't have to come in knowing what you want to do. You got to learn things, you got to experience things, you haven't seen everything. So it's very much okay if you have an idea going in third year, because you can kind of like map your schedule around that. But most people know if they want to do medicine, surgery, or not, right? So I didn't decide on orthopedic surgery until like halfway through my second year. And like the research that I started was in like thoracic surgery and mediastinal, either way. All that to say, you don't have to choose too late, but you know, you do these things called acting internships, where you act as the lower level resident. You help out with seeing patients, seeing consults, running the floor, stuff like that. And then you also have away rotations where you do whatever I said in the AI at another hospital for like a month. And depending on the specialty, it may not be required, but more competitive things like orthopedic surgery, they want you to do like 3 away rotations where I gotta pay rent at another place and my apartment back in Greenville, and you know, buy my own food and all these things. So it's an inconvenience, but it's a thing to see how other hospital systems do things, and it's a way to increase the tools in your kit. You must. So AIs, aways, and then you're applying for this thing called residency. And I'll go into that. Yeah, we can go next. All right, so residency is after you graduate, it's your training, it's your apprenticeship, right? It's where you really learn the ins and outs and coding, and really you get the in-depth training of how to be a doctor. You're at the hospital longer than anybody out there probably, but you know, you're really sharpening the sword and becoming better. You start off as an intern, you do that and that learns, what do they say for surgeons? Intern year is how you become a doctor, and the rest of it is how you become a surgeon. They're varying lengths. Surgical subspecialties are usually about 5 years of residency plus a year or plus more of fellowship, right? So your residency, you intern, and then your residency, then your fellowships, right? Internal medicine, family medicine, most every other thing is like 3 years. So just something to consider. But to get to residency, you got to go through this match process, and essentially it's you interview with different schools, and then you rank them how you want to, where you feel most strongly about where you want to be, and then the hospital also ranks you on where they believe you to be above other applicants. They put it through this random computer algorithm, and then you get a match. You get that in like March, and then if you don't match, you get soap into another specialty or another program, try again. And some people would have to do like prelim years, but you know, we're gonna match, we're gonna do great. All right, we're gonna think about that. But this is just introduction, how things go and what to expect. So med school, residency, fellowship, and then you're attending the position, handling life.
Easy peasy.
Come on. Question.
Yeah, so what do y'all have for us?
So my biggest question.
Yeah.
Has always been, what does the actual day-to-day schedule look like? Like, how different is it from going here?
Oh, like, okay, yeah, so med school, it depends what year you're in,
So
so,
like first year,
yeah,
you
so
go in your
first.
first year, what's the schedule like?
So at our place, our first year is very different than how second year goes. So first year, we're doing our like doctor class, which we call IPM. We do that like 3 times a week. So like we'll go in, learn some skills, learn how to interview patients. Then the rest of the time, they're like loading you with lectures, like 3, 4 lectures a day. The nice thing is in med school, you can watch it all online, 2 times speed. That's the way to do it. So you watch all of those lectures, you do your Anki cards, you do your practice, but like compared to undergrad, it's so much more work. I'm working like 8 to 12 hours a day, and in med school, you can't cram, that's not even an option. That's, you gotta study every single day. I mean, you can take a couple days off every once in a while, but like, pretty much every day you're on it nonstop. M2 year, it's like they crank up the heat, it's even more work, but like the schedule is even better, like, right now, I only have to be in class Monday. I have a full day of like pretending to be a doctor, learning all these skills, interviewing patients, doing all of that. The rest of the week, they're just loading me with a bunch of lectures, and then I'm just trying to like, keep my bearings.
And all of your lectures are video based?
Everything is recorded. You can go in and actually watch it in person. I think like a third of the class does that. Everybody else is just watching at 2 times speed, doing their flashcards, and then studying like 8 to 10 hours a day. It sounds like a lot, but like, I mean, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, because like it is a really rewarding thing. Like, what you're aiming towards. Like you work so hard, you've done all with all the stuff that you need to, and then like you're almost there. So yeah.
You also take into account, like, all you do is school. So in like college, I was working 20, 30 hours a week on top of school, and then fraternity stuff, all those things, all the things that played into that. For this, you're just doing school and like a couple extracurriculars, but it's just like, it's feasible, because like, that's all you really have to focus on. They give you the stuff, you know what you gotta do, and then boom, you're out.
Cause you're not allowed to work.
You're not allowed to work. Some people still work,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
It's crazy how they're able to, but like, you're not allowed to work.
If you think you're gonna be able to work while going to med school, like you're tripping.
Mhm.
That is not an option. Like you're putting in like 60, 40, 80 hours a week, like just studying. I think 80 is pushing it, but like you're putting in a lot of work. Like you cannot work like a normal job after that. Like that's absurd.
Yeah, like the closest thing you can get.
Oh,
Oh no, go kill it. I'm just saying it's feasible.
I was just gonna say too that like a lot of schools do have options too. Like if you want to make a little extra cash, like the school will pay you like tutor some students below you if like you want to do that. And that's what I do. Like some Mondays I'll do like these big tutoring sessions for like the M1 students, and the school pay you for that, which is nice. I mean, it's nothing like having an actual job. We just rely on loans.
Yeah, for the most part.
I sold plasma. I need food.
Yeah. But yeah, like in school, like you can do like side hustles, like you can babysit, you tutor, sell your plasma, there's
I sold stocks.
there's like side hustles you can do, but you can't work an actual job and pass. I mean, you can't do both. And then what was your question?
Question, because like the government's thinking about surviving in the middle east, medical school, I guess, is the answer to that.
Yeah, so the way the loans work, right, like every school, they factor in like a cost of living, so like, when they're giving you a loan, like, they expect you to live off of that loan. And it's not like, it's enough to live, but it's not like you're not eating like steak and lobster every night, it's like, it's kind of like how college is, right, like, you're like trying to like survive off like ramen and all of that, I mean, like, not
But they ain't got
necessarily.
no Hicks Cafe. Ooh, I love Hicks, man. Ooh,
Yeah,
could
but
keep me out of
it's
there.
like, you'll pay your rent, you'll have enough money to go out and meet friends every once in a while, but like, you're not splurging, like, you have enough to make ends meet. But yeah, you're not gonna go out and like have a blast with your loans. I mean, you can, but then, you'll be broke really quick.
You can, but yeah,
Yeah.
just be responsible. I treated myself after I got step one, then I had to sell some old stocks just to pay my rent for a couple months to the next refund
Yeah.
check.
I think, I'll get like, my loans are maxed out, so like every semester I'll get like $10,000 or something, and then I divide that like, across like 8, like what, like 5, 6 months, something like that,
Yeah.
like, it's a reasonable amount of money, like you'll definitely be able to live, but like, yeah, schools account for that, like they know you can't work, so they're gonna give you enough money to make ends meet. Any
Just
other
a quick
questions?
question.
Yeah.
How much money did you have to put up front? Cause like, you know, like even as an undergrad, you have to wait a time period before you get your loans,
Yeah,
right? So how much money did you put up front from the time that you were approved, like you got accepted into the med school? And then you got your loans?
right, that's a good question, so I think it wasn't a whole lot, like, I think like before med school starts, like you have to get an apartment, right? So like, you know, whatever the apartment takes, like maybe you might have to give 1 month up front or something like that. So that's the biggest thing, and then we generally got our loans within the first week of school, like first week or first 2 weeks. And then after that, like, you'll get your loan like literally as soon as the semester starts, so it gets better, but like the initial loan, I think it takes like, you know, like a week or something, so you'll need to focus on like trying to get a place to live and do all of that. And that's at our school specifically, I can't speak for other schools.
Right. So what you're putting up ahead of time is the application fees.
I dropped like 3K on that.
Yeah, that thing,
application
But I did like-
fees and-
Same.
I did 22, right? Because I knew I had that low MCAT, so I had to throw out a blanket, and hope for the best. So if you feel strong enough in yourself, it's like, all right, cool, I got about the average MCAT, I got a solid GPA, and you know you probably only want to stay in state. You can cut it down by all means. Like 22, that was a lot. That was every school in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Maryland, Virginia. So it was all those things, and then like the HBCUs. So I did all that. I was like 3K. I had to just for 27, I had to get all that back. So I was at Bonefish, flipping them that day, they shrimp.
yeah, that's definitely a lot, and I think the average is at least 20 med schools. So it's like a lot of people are applying a decent amount of schools, and you gotta remember, that's just like, you gotta pay for primaries, then you pay for secondaries. I think after COVID, it's all virtual interviews, which I think is like super, super helpful.
I was just
because
about
like,
to ask you that part.
yeah,
Yeah.
cause like I interviewed at like, you know, I applied MD and DO, so I interviewed at like DO schools in the middle of nowhere where like I had no intention on going. And like, so if it wasn't COVID, like I would have to take a plane and travel all the way out there and do all of that, but like, so that is definitely one factor, like, you know, that I think that saves so much money is not having to go in person for interviews, but primary, secondary applications is definitely gonna set you back a lot.
Money skill for life. Try to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in your savings account at all times, and don't cut. This is for life. So life ever happens, you lose your job, something, whatever. You at least have 3 to 6 months of living expenses. That's rent, gas, and food. You should be fine.
Yeah.
Just work hard and save up.
Yeah, they don't teach you any finances in med school. It's something you gotta like learn in your spare time. I don't know how money works. I just max out my loans. I just pray for the best.
And just pray for me.
We'll be attendings one day. The money's
Yeah.
fake until I gotta start paying it back.
Exactly. Like, yeah, I look at my loan, it doesn't even affect me because I'm like, I don't know how money works. You can't hurt me.
Was there any like point in your like journey, I guess, where you were like really like unmotivated and like kind of like giving up? Like,
Yeah.
like if so, like how did you like work through that?
Yeah, so, like, yeah, well, I dropped out of school my first year. So, and I was washing dishes and like, at that point, I was like, yo, I gotta do all this to be a doctor? Like, that's crazy. Like, I don't,
And you're undergrad, right?
yeah, so first year of my college, like, career, like, flunked out and everything. And it's like, yeah, you look at, you know, everything we went over and I'm like, I gotta do all of that, plus I'm a dropout. Like, I don't know if I can do that. So it's the biggest advice I could give you is take it one step at a time, right? Focus on like 1 or 2 things you gotta do and just, you know, do that. And then as you get better, try to like add another 1 or 2 things and then just keep at it for a couple of years and then, you know, you'll have a whole application. It's not something that you do overnight, you know, you can really like get lost in the sauce just by looking at everything. So just focus on like one specific thing, like where are you right now and what is the most important thing you need to do? Focus on that. Once you get your bearings, then focus on what else you need to improve upon. So, yeah.
Kayla, you been in the trenches? How'd you get out of a funk?
The biggest thing, like for me, like the one time, it was really like the only one time where I was like, do I really want to do this? Was like mid MCAT studying for me. Cause like, dude, that exam is just like, it's really big. And I was like, God, like, do I really want to study like this all day, all the time? Cause like med school is a lot of studying. But I really think like once you like get over the hump of the MCAT and like you're like, I did that, like we're through that. Like I really think nothing's like holding you back after that. Cause like in my personal like observation, like the MCAT, like any people I know that were pre-med that stopped, it was like almost always at the MCAT.
Mhm.
And if you make it through that, you're like you're set. You can make it through anything med school throws at you, I think. And a lot of it I think too is just like you have to learn that like, at the end of the day, there's some things you just kind of have to do. Like there are days like now that like I wake up, I'm like, I don't want to study, but I have to.
Only, let's see, nah, it'd be like at the end of each semester, after a long, just so much time of grinding. I don't lose sleep over med school. I sleep great, I eat great, like life is, good. But like at the end of each semester, it just gets pretty like grim. I mean, all your friends are on vacation and stuff, having parties, they able to live life, and I'm sitting there in these books. But you learn to get over FOMO and this whole delayed gratification thing that your day is going to come and you're going to be eating, but until then you just got to like remember your goal, remember your why do you want to do this, like what are you doing this for. Like I had a little nephew that was just born, and I remember I held him right before my interview. He was like 6 months. I was like, man, I'm gonna make sure you all right. He did, but just remember your why, keep in contact with your loved ones frequently. Like my best friend made me call him every Sunday. And so it's like, just keep in contact with your loved ones, network, connect with your classmates because they're just as down bad as you. And like their time of a funk happens a different time than yours. But like, being able to pull each other out of that, but like keep your friends and family back home close. If you need gotta go to therapy, make sure you go to therapy, make sure you're medicated, all those things. Because I have friends, they haven't left the bed in like 2 weeks, haven't been studying, and then like they also haven't been taking meds and none of that stuff. And like they also don't know why they're in the funk. It's like, oh yeah, maybe that's why. But like you really gotta stay on top of taking care of yourself. Because wherever the head goes, the body follows. If you lose this, we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, so the nice thing was when I graduated, COVID hit. And I didn't pay a lick of my loans. I still like after undergrad, because like they kept pushing off the student loans. I was like, yes, like this helped. So like I didn't pay off, like I haven't touched any of my loans, which I mean is probably not like the best financial decision, but like I can't afford to pay it off right now. So that was nice, but I think generally after you graduate, I think they give you a year or 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah,
You get 6 months after you graduate to start paying back.
yeah.
You have 6 months.
And then I think,
After 6 months, if you're not in school again, you have to pay it back. If in 6 months you are institutionalized again, then you don't have to pay
Yeah.
anything back.
But then you can also like pay reach out to whoever your lenders are and be like, hey, I'm gonna pay this minimum amount because, usually debt collectors, as long as you're paying something, they're like thumbs up. So just figure out what that minimum amount is that you can pay for that 6 months until you're back in.
They also have through FAFSA or like through whoever your lender is that you're getting, as long as it's not private, right? So if you have the federal student loans, you can apply for your income-based repayment plan. And so you only are charged to pay back what you can afford based off of your current income. So if you're making like 20 to 15 a year or less, then your repayment is 0. And then you're fine.
There's
And then
also
you have to-
other deferrals that you can
Yeah.
apply for, so not I recommend this, but when I had a child, they will defer you for a certain, like, big life changes. You buy a house, they will defer, give you a, so many months deferral. Getting married, moving, like, there's all kinds of
Losing a
little
job.
things, yes, all kinds of little things that you can go in and get little deferrals for, so keep an eye out for that kind of stuff too.
The worst thing you can do though is to ignore it
Mhm.
and not contact them.
Yeah.
Because once your loans that you have to pay back go into default and they go to collections, you cannot apply for loans again. Like, you're just off the list. So if anytime you want to go back to school, it's now completely out of pocket.
That's crazy, especially for med school, like, I don't think, unless you have like super rich parents, then you're set, but like, most people cannot afford it to take, because of the average, debt for like med school is like, I think $220,000. I can't pay that out of pocket. I think most people don't have that kind of money just sitting around, so like, you need those, loans. So yeah, definitely don't, forget about your loans, because then that's gonna like mess you up for the future.
All right, you said another question.
Yeah.
So out of you guys' cohort or like people you're in school with, how many have master's degrees?
Oh, you could have mentioned that. Yeah, so boom, say undergrad didn't go too hot. There's an option. And you could do like a post-bac program. You could do a master's of biomedical sciences where they'll basically put you through the first year of med school. And then you get a GPA from that. They'll even give you like research and shadowing opportunities. So where you can like build yourself up, right? And then you can either get I know with us, we'll take your highest GPA. So if your highest GPA was undergrad, we'll take that. But if you did not as well in undergrad, but you did a post-bac or master's program, and you got like a 4.0 from that, we'll evaluate you based on that, if it's at least 18 hours. So that, for me, our program, there's this Duke Masters of Biomedical Science program where you're guaranteed an interview. I think if you do well enough, you're guaranteed an admission, right? So I think at least like 12 to 15 people in like each class did that Duke program. And then I'd probably say a fifth of my classes have like a master's degree. So,
Yeah.
Of some sort, so it doesn't have to be biomedical.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people do it. If you do want to do a post-bac, definitely recommend, going to a post-bac that like, because some of them will like guarantee acceptance. If you hit a certain GPA, most of them will like offer like a guaranteed interview at whatever medical school it's at. You want to do a post-bac at a medical school because they have like, things in place like that. If you do a post-bac at like some random university that's not affiliated with the medical school, that's not much good. So definitely do something where you get either an interview or a guaranteed acceptance. And then with post-bac, you got to treat it like your last shot, because it kind of is like, you cannot afford to slack on a post-bac like that. If you like flunk out of a post-bac, I mean, your chances of like redeeming your medical application after that are like really, really slim. So you gotta give it everything. And they're not easy. Like post-bacs are specifically designed to be challenging. Like they're giving you like medical level classes, so you gotta be on it. But yeah, we have a lot of people that have done post-bacs.
Especially that darn Duke program.
Oh man, those
Understand.
Duke kids are like, so the thing is like with the Duke program, they pretty much learn everything from the first year of med school. So I remember when I was in M1, these Duke kids were killing it. And I was like, I just can't compete with them because they've already done it before.
And they was chilling, going on
Yeah,
vacation.
yeah.
Like they had to study as hard. They already did it.
One thing about post-bac though, it's like they're insanely expensive. I think just 1 year could be like $50,000. So definitely need to keep that in your mind, but like $50,000 to get into medical school, like in the long run, like I definitely think that's worth it. Because some people say like, oh, if you did bad, just retake all your classes from undergrad. When you apply to med school, like all the classes that you did bad on, plus your like retakes, like it's all gonna factor into one GPA. So like it's still probably won't be that high. So like that's where getting a master's might be beneficial because you get a separate GPA with the master's. Yeah.
So you said that like you didn't study very well for the MCAT, you did lots of volunteer. What was like the timeline like that you considered like clean or that you would consider like a good amount for you to be comfortable?
I graduated early in December. So I basically had until May. And I didn't start studying seriously until April. So don't play like I thought I was smarter than I was. So like I'd say 3 months of serious study. And like that last month, take a practice test every week.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, but those 3 months, like, do it seriously. Do practice questions. Practice questions, practice questions. That's the one thing I would change. Practice questions. I didn't start doing practice questions until my second year of med school and then like change my studying for everything. Right. But if I would start with those daggone practice questions, I was like, I ain't paying for them tests. I no. Bite the bullet, pay the money, ask a friend, like do them practice questions. But yeah, like 3 months of serious study you should be fine.
Yeah, I'd say 3 months on the lower end, like, you could definitely push it to like 6 months might be a little too much, like, you'll be miserable studying for that test for so long, but like, with MCAT, there's like 2 phases, there's like content review where you just learn all the information, that's what Ankhi's really good for, and then there's like second phase where you do all the practice questions. So just, I mean, go at your own pace, like, yeah, you can do it full time, 3 months, you could even push it back to like, I did mine in like 5 months, which I was super burnt out, by the end of that, but like, yeah, just break it up into like different chunks. Yeah, anywhere from 3 to 5 months. Definitely don't spend like 6 months to a year on it. And at some point you're gonna plateau too. So like, just try to learn it as quickly as you can, hit everything you need to, and then just move on.
Yeah, I did about I think it was about 4.5 months. I just took it once. Like but I did spend like a lot like of time like making sure that like had like a really solid like plan. Like I knew exactly like pretty much every single day for like 4.5 months, like I knew exactly what I was gonna be doing. And I knew when I was gonna be taking practice tests. I knew when I was gonna start doing practice problems. I knew like what flashcards I wanted to do that day. And I thought it was really beneficial. I think 3 months for me would have been cutting it pretty short because I don't know, I didn't pay like a ton of attention in my undergrad classes. Like sure I crammed before like an exam, you can scoop by with like an A or B, but you don't really like learn anything. So like I get back to like having to do like a physics practice problem after having not taken it for a year and a half, and my brain is literally like melting when they're talking about like, oh, you've got a ball on a triangle and it's falling down and the wind is blowing this way. And it's like, okay, I don't know. But definitely like I would prepare to set aside 3 months. I think taking over this like spending a summer to study is much easier than doing it like during classes as well. Like I don't know how I would have done it like studying full time with classes. Like I started when I was in classes, but it was like, like end of March, April, take finals, and then you have the rest of May, June, July to study.
Don't be like me. Like I crammed all through college. I can tell you right now. I was one of the people, it'd be like Thursday. They'd be like, this is gonna be on the test on Tuesday. I'd be like, yo, we got a test on Tuesday. I was in the library that weekend grinding. Like, don't be like me.
Yeah, like after undergrad, cramming is not an option. You can't cram for the MCAT, you definitely can't cram for med school, and then, so just try to put in the work, like cramming is not viable after undergrad.
How does like research differ from undergrad to medical school? Like I know at Coastal at least you
Billy, did you do research in undergrad?
I can't see you, because
I did about 6 months here at Coastal. I did research with Dr. Barthe, and um I mean like it's not like I feel like in undergrad everyone thinks that like it has to be like bench research, like pipetting all the time. But like I don't know like anyone that's really like doing that like in med school. Like my research in med school is about like the research I'm doing now is about like like student performance like in school, and like people like do like all types of research. Like you can do case reports where some dude has like a crazy like brain tumor that's growing out of his ears and no one's ever seen it before, and then like they'll let you write like a report on like a patient, and then you can submit that and that counts as research. And there's people who like I have a friend who looks through like like outcomes from certain individuals, like how they differ from like income or race, and like looking through like like old records, and then that's considered research. And like sure you can like go do like bench research, but it's a lot harder to get published, I think, if you're doing it that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, like a publication would look nicer if you had like a lot of like basic science research that like is really like impactful, because like like a case report's not super like world changing research that you're doing, but it is a little bit of a numbers game in med school with research. Like you want to get as many numbers on your application as you can.
Yeah, I know, a bunch of my buddies in undergrad that did research, they were kind of like just pipette slaves, like that's all they did was just pipette, and I was like, I can't do this. The nice thing is in med school, it's all like clinical stuff. Yeah, like killing, do case report, it's like I'm doing like an exoskeleton research thing, so like I'll put on a whole exoskeleton and like mimic like, patient moving scenarios, so we can like try to reduce injury, like it's clinical stuff, so it's like the stuff that you're, most of that's like relevant to your field, so that definitely makes it more interesting.
And you just did a presentation on that, right?
Yeah,
poster presentation?
yeah. So we had a little conference at my school. I'm also going to Prisma Health in next month to present that research. So yeah, it's definitely like, I think research in med school is probably better because it's like more relevant to like what you're actually doing. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And it
on
wasn't the
research.
snakes and the spiders and the fruit fly.
Yeah.
What is, as far as like utilizing like the school's resources and technologies, like how do you, like I know, like doesn't school medicine, I don't know if it's Greenville or Columbia or both, but they have like a new, like their ultrasound technology, they're like one of the first schools
Yeah,
to use it.
yeah.
Like your lectures you're saying are like virtual mostly.
That's during your how to be a doctor class.
Mhm.
And so they have an extra component where they work in like just doing ultrasound of different parts of the body and they get certified to that. We also learn how to do ultrasound in our school. And then so we can utilize it in our practice, but we just don't come out certified. We just
Right.
know how to utilize it.
Yeah, and then you reminded me, if you guys are applying to USC Greenville or Columbia, when they ask like, why do you want to go to school? Definitely mention their ultrasound and be like, oh my God, you guys have this amazing ultrasound program. Like, like that's also a big plus. If you're applying to Greenville, talk about their EMT program, because we have like an EMT program where they train us to be EMTs. So just be like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing since sliced bread. Like, I want to be a part of that.
And lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, lifestyle medicine. So definitely like those are like buzzwords, like, definitely include that in your
High yield.
Yeah,
Very high yield.
yeah. So, include that with USC Greenville. Columbia they don't have EMT, but they do have the ultrasound program. So talk about that.
They give us free iPads.
Yeah,
They
Yeah.
give us a bunch of free textbooks, but like I ain't read no textbook.
Yeah. And free in quotes. I'm sure that money's
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm sure this is terrifying, right?
Yeah.
So much went over your heads. It's Friday already. Go to Tongies or whatever house. But oh, you got a question? My fault.
Okay, so a major in biology, what would you say would be the best biology?
I didn't have a
I mean, yeah, no minor. Like literally.
Me neither. I don't think it helps either. Unless
Yeah.
it's like something you're super duper passionate about. Like if you're like a bio major and you get a minor in chem thinking it's gonna help, it's not.
Definitely what I recommend, is like GPA is kind of a game, right? So like, yeah, you guys are all most of the part like biology majors, biochem majors. That's good. You get all your science classes out of the way, but like really your main goal should just be to get as high of a GPA as possible. So like hit up, rate my professor, try to find the easiest professors. You don't have to take the hardest science
Okay.
class. Take the
That's
easiest
taking
one.
ecology.
I took 3 ecology classes, like, cause I'm trying to get that GPA up. That is the goal.
Biomedical ethics.
So, yeah,
Yes.
so, do the easy, like, just take the easy classes. Nobody cares if you took like a 400 level, like immunology class that like, only a handful of people pass, because when you apply to med school, they can't see that. So yeah.
And no one cares if you took 20 credit hours in a semester either. Like that's not gonna make you look better because you took like 10 classes and you got all B's. Like the dude who took 12 credit hours and got all A's is gonna look 10 times better.
I did 12 credit hours like my last 3 semesters. They almost took my
Yeah.
scholarship. Like I
Exactly.
skated by through college.
Yeah, that's what I did last year, 12
Same.
credit. And then I think my very last semester, I even took like 6 credit hours. Like, it doesn't matter as long as you get the grades, like, make it easy on yourself. Like, nobody cares if you took like the hardest class in all of coastal, because like schools can't see that. I mean, yeah, that's definitely my advice.
Yeah, you gotta kind of play the game a little bit, like I like if I had to like do it all over again, I would literally take like the minimum amount to keep scholarships and whatnot. the easiest courses because at the end of the day, like, you know, you're not like you're trying to go to med school and like a lot of these classes won't be like super applicable to you like long term. So just get through them. Once you're in med school, you'll be like relearning everything anyway from the ground up. So
But college should be fun. Like
Yeah.
take classes we should be learning skills and enjoying them here. Like, I don't know, pick up a second language or something. That's what college should be for. They're just checking all these boxes.
No, it's just a bunch of ecology. That's
yeah, that's a good point. I wish I took more classes that like I was actually like interested in because it really is like your last chance to like once you're in med school, like you're in it for the long haul. You've got like 4 years med school, minimum 3 years residency staring at you. So that's like your last chance to go and learn like a new skill or like take a fun class or so
I wouldn't say last chance. Like one of
yeah,
the
but
residents I was rotating with, he said he like takes salsa classes in his free time and he's reading books.
So you guys said that like a minor doesn't really help on the application. Do you think an honors college like diploma helps at all, or do you think that's also kind of?
I avoided that honors college because they ain't never invite me to it. I had like a 4.0 like most of my college. They ain't want to invite me to I ain't doing.
I don't. So with the honors college, is it?
No, people was getting invited. It was like, hey, we invite you to apply to honors. I remember people showing me the emails. I was like, why do you want to give it to me? They ain't want to invite me,
With
so I ain't doing.
honors college, like that shows up on your transcript, right? Like,
Thank
oh, you
I
honors.
don't think it helps. I don't think like if someone has like a 515 MCAT and they were not in the honors college, like they're just gonna look like they're still gonna look 10 times better than if you were in the honors college and got like a 505, for example. Like sure, it's like a nice little thing, like a little blip on your transcript, but like if you're not in it, like I don't know how it works here, but like I remember when I was at like Clemson for like 2 years, like the people in the honors college always got like first pick of classes and they got their own separate classes. And like if you want to do it for that purpose, sure. But
They
like
had
don't
like write papers and stuff, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
that was gonna get
but don't do it if you think it's gonna look better. Like do it because you actually want to do it. And like that's like the case for like a lot of these things.
They now have a thing where you can pick, there's two separate versions of like the honors diploma, and the only thing that changes is what's on your transcript. And it's either one where you write a thesis before graduating, or you don't write a thesis, and you can pick which one you want. And if you write the thesis, you also have to take more like honors for credit, like right?
No one will know that you're in honors unless you mention it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's how these people, oh yeah, I went to a USC honors college. Like that's just their spiel, like their introduction. Clemson honors. I'm down with the Coastal Carolina. I'm proud.
Yeah, I think that just make it easy on yourself. Take the easiest classes you can. It's not gonna make a huge difference. Yeah, and like Killian said, when the MCAT comes, like that is the great divider. Like, if you're in honors and like you have a mediocre MCAT, that's not gonna look too well. So just try to get as high of a GPA as possible and move on.
But hold on, stay in honors as long as you can to get that early registration, because it's really hard to get the classes you want.
Oh, yeah,
That is.
physics.
Yeah.
So physics classes.
Yeah, and then, one thing, like, if you, I know some of you guys, like, might try to, like, take anatomy or immunology because, like, you think it'll be, like, relevant to medical school, like, it will definitely help out. But the thing is, like, don't sweat it if you're not able to, get in, like, if you're not able to, like, register for, like, immunology or anatomy. Because the thing is, like, when you actually go into med school, it's completely different. I never took anatomy before I started med school. And like the amount of volume you have in med school is like nothing else. So like, if it's your first time seeing the stuff, like the odds are you'll probably be fine. It definitely helps if you've taken it in like undergrad, but it's not going to be like a deal breaker. There's plenty of people that never saw any anatomy until they stepped into med school, and like you'll be all right.
Yeah, same. I never took anatomy, and I know like people that did, and like they would tell me like like the amount like the debt like the amount of information that you're gonna learn in med school anatomy compared to undergrad anatomy is like you could cover all of like undergrad anatomy in like 2 days compared to like the amount you're gonna get like thrown into in med school. So like I don't really regret not taking anatomy.
I wish I would have took it. No, I was sitting there looking all wild, like, yo, I gotta know all this. Like, I really wish they would have made it a requirement here because almost every other school they did it. They were seeming just fine. I was fighting for my life during that. What?
Oh, I guess there's another thing we could have talked about was biochemistry, how it's not required for our program, but
Right.
certain schools do require it for you to apply.
Yeah, so it's definitely something I touched on biochem. Like, okay, I said you don't have to take some classes for med school. The exception is biochem. Take that class, like, it's super high yield for the MCAT. If you can crush biochem in undergrad, you're probably gonna crush it on the MCAT. And that is the biggest subject of the MCAT. So do yourselves a favor, when you say biochem, take it super serious.
At least do the one semester with the lab.
Yeah.
I don't know what the second semester would have went into.
I would definitely recommend taking both semesters because after that, like, it covers everything you need for the MCAT biochem.
Oh,
So I think,
I would have did better.
yeah, I think biochem 1 like stops at like glycolysis or something, and the biochem 2 like covers the Krebs cycle and like all these crazy pathways.
And then-
So definitely take them both.
If you have a bio major and you do all the chemistries and you take biochem 1 and biochem 2,
Mhm.
you get the minor.
You do, but you have to say you want the minor, because I did all the work and I never hit the checkbox that said like, I'd like my minor. So I did all the work for a chemistry minor, but I don't have one. But also like it's not gonna change anything. Like no one's gonna be like, oh my God, you're a chemistry minor. We'll happily give you a job. It doesn't change a whole lot.
I mean, but if you have one. you should
Yes, I
probably
definitely,
Go ahead. and
yes. I
Have that on your degree.
Yeah, if I could go back, I would definitely just get it, just so like I could put it on there, but it doesn't change a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, if you're doing the work. I think it is dumb. I feel like they should automatically just like say like, oh, you did the work, like you're a chemistry minor.
That would
Like,
make
would be
sense. That would
better.
make too much sense.
Yeah. All right, any other questions?
We shared our emails. I
Right.
am a Coastal Carolina advocate. All right, you email me, you introduce yourself. I'll do whatever I can in my power to help you get into med school.
Yeah.
Any questions answered, I got you.
Yeah, and also I'm gonna try to, I will give you guys the slide decks and then y'all can share the slide decks with everyone. So I tried to put as much information as I can. So like when you do your application, you can look back at the stuff and be like, oh, this is what they talked about. We have all the MCAT resources, so when that time comes, definitely check them out. But yeah, other than that, like I hope I didn't scare any of you guys off. Like medicine is definitely worth it. It's a grind, but like if I had to restart tomorrow, I'd do it all over again. Like it's definitely worth it.
Sure, I wish I would have had something like this when I was in it. Like, med students to come back and reach out. So,
Yeah.
Hope this is useful of your time.
Yeah.
Sorry we kept you on Friday.
Yeah, go out, enjoy the rest of your Friday, touch some grass.
Yes. Touch some grass. I love that. Sunshine, vitamin D.
When are you guys driving back?
So I think,
Tonight?
No, yeah, we didn't come here just for this. We were gonna be here anyway.
Well, because I know you've got family in the area, so.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm not sure how long you guys are
Hanging
staying.
out with my frat brothers.
Yeah, how long are you in here?
Probably
Okay.
till tomorrow.
Okay,
Thank you for coming.
yeah, of course, nice to meet you, yeah.
I'll be definitely emailing you guys.
Say the word.